Well, the two teams that had the rest get about 6 more months of it now. A flying start by one grand finalist, a rip-roaring finish from this Saturday's opponent, 2 preliminary finals to remember. Let's recall the very best and the very ordinary in Hot or Not.
Footyology's Hot or Not is proudly brought to you by Trade Institute of Victoria. Start your future today at tiv.vic.edu.au.
Righto, I'm going to go first today. There are so many great stories in this grand final, but one of my favourite is little Benny McGlynn. We spoke to him on SEN after the game on Friday night. Played a fantastic, really got the ball rolling for him. You see this goal here, he kicks in about the first 30 seconds, I think. But it's been probably the unluckiest story of any player involved. Played all year for Hawthorn in 07, injured 08, misses out in the flag. Goes to Sydney, misses out on 2012 flag after playing all season, got injured in the qualifying final, comes back, plays in 2014, they get thrashed by his old club with whom he misses out playing in 3 premierships. So third time lucky for him, hopefully, and I can't think of a player who deserves success more than him.
And he was no certainty about 8 weeks ago to be in the team, but along with Papley, they've formed a really good small forward crumbing division and a real danger for the Doggies on the weekend.
You're right.
Here's a case of, was it Edith Piaf that sang Je ne regrette rien?
Oh, I don't know.
It was.
Well, don't ask the question if you know the answer.
No, it was. Yeah, I shouldn't have. It's rhetoric. But there'll be some regrets from the Swans when Josh Dunkley takes the field on Saturday afternoon because he can play. I am staggered in the heat of the kitchen. I mean, his ability, you'll see the footage here. It was hot on Saturday night and he stood up to it. Now, the Sydney Swans almost stood aside because he said he wanted to play in Melbourne. They said if Melbourne club puts a bid in for you, we'll bow down. But if it's an interstate club, we'll pursue you. For a ruthless team like the Swans that picked up Buddy Franklin under the noses of GWS, that seems to be a mistake. He is a really good footballer.
He's got a good football head, and look, he's not the greatest kick in the world, but it's safe to say he's still a better kick than his old man.
Yeah, his old man started at St Kilda as a full forward in the reserves, and I used to go and watch the reserves play. His kicking as a full forward it wasn't comical, it was unbelievable how poor he was. That they never thought of moving him back because he had a sticky pair of hands as a kid, went to Tassie for a year, thought his dream of playing league footy was over and became a star with the Swans with a very famous grand final story himself.
Yeah, I was going to say 20 years since the Swans went to the Supreme Court, I think, and got an injunction against the suspension that allowed him to play in that grand final.
And I've interviewed him, it ruined the day for him. He has no happy memories of that grand final. It's not something he wanted, but remember, he was sort of dopped in by a commentator.
He hit James Hird.
And it was whipped up.
Well, it's probably a bit of a giveaway when James Hird got up to receive his Brownlow medal with a few stitches under his eye.
But he didn't want that, Andrew Dunkley. He does want his son to win for the Doggies, though. The former Swan, I'm telling you, will be fairly and squarely in the corner of the Doggies on the weekend.
All right, my turn, and a not for me, and sad to say it's the Cats. They've had a pretty good season, I reckon, but it all turned to you-know-what on Friday night. They were gone at quarter time, and again, I won't labour it, but can't help thinking the long layoff, one game in 27 days, was a factor. But
Really?
Well, no, we won't get into that. We'll do that later. But they were just jumped by a better side. And it didn't give a yelp. That was the thing. I mean, they never really looked like making a game of it. And the midfielders beneath Dangerfield and Selwood just didn't fire a shot. So I think when they're doing their review, that'll probably be the first thing they look at. So, if we don't get our second-tier midfielders to step up, we've got to go out and get some more.
I think they've got the best named player in the AFL.
Wiley Buzzer?
No, Josh Caddy. He's out there. He's out there, but he's not playing.
No, didn't fire a shot. Mitch Duncan,
I feel
ordinary.
sorry. You see, Duncan, disappointing. I feel sorry for Caddy. He had a great game last year against the Bulldogs. No Dangerfield, obviously, last year, and Selwood didn't play. His main opponent, Caddy, his opponents are Dangerfield and Selwood. He's an inside mid. And that job's taken. They should trade Josh Caddy. He'd be more than handy for a club looking for some grunt inside because he can't get near the ball and nobody's handballing to him because he's not fast. He's not a line breaker. I think their midfield's imbalanced. I don't think they read well as a team. They're leg heavy down the back end, and they've got no zip at the front end. They've got some work to do.
Okay, you're up.
This is not became hot in the game on Saturday night. Caleb Daniel had he looked nervous.
Yeah, he was ordinary.
He was fumbly and double handling, and then this happened right near the end of the third quarter. To this point, Caleb Daniel was a liability. Dalhouse tackled by Patfull, desperate work there in the forward line, and picked up by Daniel for a vital snap just near three-quarter time, and his last quarter was beautiful. Hit a couple of targets, got back in the game. The one caveat with Caleb, and watch for it on the weekend, he's just too small to lay effective tackles. They do bust through him a bit, so we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, no, he certainly lifted. He had a few mates too. Okay, my last is a very hot Clay Smith, and probably won the game for him, really. The man who put the score on the board, got him off to a good start. He was tough, good goal sense. And they've looked a much better side ever since he came back into it. His first game back after that knee reconstruction was in that great win over Sydney at the SCG. And he's just given them a bit more bite up forward, and a really indispensable part of it. And then, of course, to deliver that after dealing with the tragedy of losing his friend in that car accident, died earlier in the week, and we saw how emotional he was afterwards. But fantastic effort not only to play, but to play as well as he did. And he's a big asset for him going into the grand final.
You know, when he started, he was highly promising, hard as nails, but I'll tell you what, he was a terrible kick. And he's come back, obviously done what he could in his rehabilitation, but he's pretty deadly now around goals, which is anything but what he was when he started. What a good player.
Last one.
Rhyming slang for underpants, the old Reeves Grundy. I mean, Heath Grundy is a ripper. He's underrated. Alex Rance is sort of universally considered the best fullback in the comp. I think this guy puts in a pretty good argument himself. Never beaten. It was always going to be hard for Hawkins and therefore for Geelong. If Tom Boyd does play forward with the return or the availability of Roughhead, then don't expect any goals from that fella, because this guy is as good as there is going around. Grundy's a champ.
No, he's a beauty, and another remade forward, and shift to the other end's done wonders for him.
You know, with all the programs they've had in place and the youth girls coming through, like I went and watched the Youth Girls Carnival a couple of months ago, and I was blown away. Like, they were, you know, the skill level and the way they moved the ball was phenomenal. So the skill is definitely there.